Be selective about who you outsource your website and SEO to. Be very particular. Make sure that they have the experience to get you found, that they understand your industry, and don't fall for buzzwords, don't fall for cheap marketing tactics. Pay the money to put a real professional in place to do the work for you if you're going to put a professional in place to do the work for you.
Well, hello and welcome to another guest interview here on the Profit with Love podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and today we are going to be talking about marketing. And I say, sometimes I start off, I'm like, we're going to be talking about marketing again. And you guys forget sometimes, but I talk about it all the time. I batch record the podcast interviews, right? So this is my 6th interview today, and literally our fourth marketing conversation. So 4 out of 6 episodes I recorded today is talking about marketing. Now,
that's stamina right there.
I love talking about marketing for many different reasons, but I'm just going to highlight this real quick. So for those of you who are new, haven't been listening to this show, I'm Moshe Amsel. I'm a business coach. I'm an accountant. I work with law firms in a fractional CFO capacity. I work with law firms in a business advisory capacity. And I can tell you that there's basically 2 building blocks to growing and having a successful, highly profitable law firm. And that is growing your team and then consistently filling their plate. And the only way to consistently fill their plate is to have a good marketing plan, marketing strategy to do that. The problem is that there are literally a million ways to market your law firm. And that's why we're never going to get tired of this conversation. We will have as many guests as we can find that are experts in the industry, because everybody brings something new to the conversation. Everybody brings a new perspective, a new way of thinking about something, a new idea that, not to confuse you, but maybe it's the thing you've been looking for. Maybe it's the one thing that's been missing in your strategy. So our guest today is Doug Bradley. Doug is a president and founder of Everest Legal Marketing. His commitment to trust and ethical business practices sets him apart from the unethical practices of some in his industry. He values strong relationships with his clients and strives for excellence in his work. Doug, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Moshe. I appreciate the opportunity to connect with you and talk about something that I'm really passionate about.
Awesome. So, Doug, real quick, our audience, I gave you a very short bio there. Doesn't really tell us who you are. Our audience wants to know who you are. Give us the backstory. How in the world did you get involved in marketing, legal marketing, or don't talk about that at all and tell me about what sport you love to play. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I actually kind of stumbled into this industry a bit. I was in the world of advertising way back when people used phone books to find businesses. And that was during the Great Recession. And at that time, advertisers were just hemorrhaging out of the phone book. And I knew that I needed to make a change. And luckily enough for me, a recruiter found me through a major legal directory. And they had seen, and I'd shown them some of the success I had had in my market. And they said, okay, you're hired. And I really turned around a flailing territory to a very profitable territory within about a year's time through selling ads on the legal directory as well as search engine optimization. However, the problem was for me, and I caught on to this relatively quickly as I started with this firm, was that we would sell SEO campaigns and website design, and we're going to do this and that. And as salespeople, that's what we're trained to do, is sell these products and services. And I quickly found that once the sizzle wore off and once the sales deck had been exhausted, that the company that I was selling for just was not executing very well. And so very few of my sales were sticking, and I was getting a lot of chargebacks because clients weren't paying for them. And so just as a self-preservation technique, I had to learn how to help the SEO process. So I learned very quickly what impacts SEO. This we're talking about, 10, 15 years ago. What works, what doesn't work, what helps a lawyer be found, what helps compel someone to call a law firm, or hit the back button and choose another law firm to consider. And so that experience really helped tune me up for owning my own agency. And I don't think that I could be could have the company that I have now if it were not for that excruciating process then.
Yeah. Now, there's going to be a lot of listeners who are listening to this show that have either plunked down money with a marketing agency to perform in SEO, or they're thinking about it. And by and large, the small law firms that are investing in this way they're really set up for failure because it's very hard to dethrone number one, right? And with SEO, really the name of the game is to show up as the first result in search. Um, so you're kind of playing behind the eight ball. You're trying to dethrone the king, and you're trying to do it with a tiny budget and hoping that a vendor is going to wave a magic wand and solve the problem for you. And I believe you would agree with this that real good SEO, like to be able to show up number one in search consistently, it requires you to be continuously putting out new stuff, to be continuously adding content to your site, to show Google that this is a live site that's very useful, and also to just be showing up for more search terms. I also know that there's tactics like, long tail keywords that,
Mhm.
you may not show up number one for personal injury, in your area, but, maybe you specialize in scaffolding accidents, and people who in scaffolding accidents are doing a search like, what's the fastest road to recovery from a scaffolding accident, and that's a term that you can potentially rank number one for fairly
Sure.
easily. And that's the way to kind of start your SEO game. So all of this, I wanted to shortcut the conversation around this because I think that these are conversations we've had already with previous guests.
Mhm.
But I want to jump into the conversation at this juncture. Where, like, okay, the given is for somebody who's first starting out with SEO, they're just trying to be found on Google. The key is to create content that focuses on long tail keywords. Would you agree that that's the strategy to go with for somebody, a fledgling new SEOer?
Yeah, I think on your website, I think that's a fine recommendation, and I definitely agree that being found for some of the less obvious search phrases for your practice area will get you visibility faster. But you have to also walk and chew gum at the same time. And while, as an agency, from our perspective, as we're trying to achieve success for visibility for maybe less volume search phrases. While we're doing that, we're also trying to get good visibility for the higher competition search phrases. If we're talking about personal injury, it might be personal injury lawyer, car accident lawyer, things along those lines that have higher volume and higher competition. But yes, we may also want to focus on bicycle accident, pedestrian accident, things along those lines, because people do search those phrases and they're far less competitive, just typically speaking, than personal injury or car accident. So I think that's a great idea. And I think also maximizing exposure on very visible directories is things that you can do quickly for little to no money. Those are all things that you can do on your own very quickly. And that's one of the things that we make sure that all of our clients start off doing.
Now, one of the things that I teach my customers to do is to always approach every decision with not how do I do this, but who's going to do this for me. And when it comes to SEO, we're approaching this with this assumption that we need to be writing content. Like there needs to be blog posts. There needs to be information that we're putting out there that when people are searching, that article is an answer to the question being asked, and therefore it's the thing that Google is serving up. Um,
Yeah.
how should a law firm owner approach this from the perspective of I love to write, I hate to write, I don't have the bandwidth to write, and how is there a way to have content written for you? And then if that's the case, what kind of problems does that bring up as far as like is the right information being given? Do I need to audit everything that's being written for me? Give me the broad strokes of how this works for somebody who wants to get into the SEO game. They need to create content. They don't want to do it themselves.
Yeah, so I would say most of our clients fall into one of two camps. They want to have nothing to do with their website, and they just want to kind of hand it over to us, and have us do everything for them. And then there's other clients who they want to be involved, but on their terms. So they may want to write the occasional article, something that we couldn't possibly write for them. Maybe an article about their opinion about a certain case or a certain law or a certain decision or something like that. It would be very difficult for us to write an article like that in that attorney's voice. But yes, I definitely believe content still is king, but authority is queen. And so if you're writing great content, we need to be making sure that it's on an authoritative platform. Your website needs to be authoritative for that topically relevant content. And so the question or the problem for the law firm owner is, how do I do this and hire someone who I can trust to actually create decent content that's not plagiarized, that's quotes the law correctly and gives some good information and helpful information to people. And what we found our process to be, and I think this is a good process, is that we've really curated writers who write legal content, most of whom are JDs. And they either write for side income or they write for just extra dollars. And they're very knowledgeable about the law. And we've helped give them the guidance on how to write from an SEO perspective. And that allows us to really deliver when a client's getting content, deliver a well-written piece of content that doesn't require too many edits, that doesn't require an hour worth of research to make sure that the content's accurate, because at the end of the day, the lawyer does not want to babysit this process. We know that. They want to be able to take a look at the content, skim it, maybe make some additions, some edits, send it back and get it published. They don't want this to be a big portion of the day. Otherwise, they wouldn't have hired us. So that's something that we've really, taken care to refine that process. And anytime we find that there's a slowdown or a problem with that process, we try to correct it right away.
No, it sounds like an expensive proposition to be, I mean, your writers are lawyers essentially, right? So,
Yes,
they're not. It's not like we're getting a writer out in the Philippines for $3 an hour.
correct.
This is it.
We tried it. It doesn't work.
There's a cost to production here. Obviously frequency of how often are you releasing a new article on your website has to do with it, but what kind of budget needs to be allocated to do this right?
Well, I am not ashamed to say that we pay our writers probably better than anyone else that I know who provides legal content to lawyers. And lawyers will quickly find that there's a lot of people who write legal content that get paid 6 cents per word or 8 cents per word. And we've tried this a decade ago with all variations of paying for low quality, low cost content and then refining it in-house and then sending it to the lawyer. And then it comes back with corrections or an angry client. And what we found best for us is that we pay our writers really well. we pay them immediately, usually within 24 to 48 hours of submitting an invoice. We pay them immediately through Zelle, and that makes our writers want to work with us. Many of our writers tell us they prefer to work with us over anyone else because we pay really well and we pay immediately. And so the psychology of that relationship is that they're always wanting more work from us. And they're always typically willing to go a little bit more, a little bit the extra mile. Whereas someone who's working for cut rate wages, they're doing just the bare minimum to collect, their fee. And that's just a really toxic relationship between an agency and the writer. But you're right. If a lawyer isn't prepared to spend at least appropriate amount of money for their market, and that's a sliding scale, then they're going to be finding agencies that deliver subpar content to them.
So I hear everything that you're saying, but I don't know that we actually arrived at a number.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't meaning to skirt the question.
So just for our listeners' sake, I mean, look, there's a lot of different places to spend a marketing dollar, right?
Sure.
And the question, and this is a question that maybe we'll lead into next, but it's where should those marketing dollars go? Like, is SEO first or is SEO last or somewhere in the middle? But I think it's helpful to listeners who may have smaller budgets to
Mhm.
understand, is this something that's even within the realm of possibility for me to consider? So, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not looking for a quote from you. I'm just looking for like
Yeah.
a ballpark idea of somebody who's producing regular content on some level of frequency, whatever that is. What kind of budget should they expect to do this right, to do it correctly?
Yeah, and I would beware of anybody charging less than about $1,500 per month for law firm SEO. Uh,
How many articles is that normally? Is that like one a
I'm going to
month or is
say
that
it's going to be within the range of one or two,
Mhm.
but it also it's the typical SEO answer. It depends.
Right?
Some clients we tend to meet our clients where they're at, and so some clients. I have a client right now who she doesn't even have a URL. She's got no authority, no topical map, no Google doesn't know her website at all because it doesn't exist yet. So the content that we make for her may look and it will look very different than the content that we make for the attorney who's been doing an SEO effort for 5 years and they have 100 articles that are well linked and internally linked. We might adjust that process to be a different combination of on-site content, off-site content, and other types of authority building. But what I find more often than not is that lawyers often just hire the person who designed their website to be the SEO of the website because that person said, oh yeah, if you give us, $300, $400, $500 a month, we'll SEO your site for you. And there's no possible way at that budget that they could be doing a decent job or getting decent content that makes the law firm look good. It might be possible, but it's definitely not probable.
Right. Okay. So let's step into that next conversation, which is, how do I determine where my marketing dollars should go? I mean, I had one conversation today where the person said, "Hey, it depends on, whether you need to put in a dollar today and get a dollar out tomorrow versus, do I have time to allow something to build and to grow?" If you need an immediate return, then you want to look at LSAs first and then Google PPC and then work on SEO. Where are you in this conversation as far as advising law firms? Like, it's interesting because when you go to a marketer who like they're an SEO shop or they're a PPC shop, like that's what they do, they're gonna want you to spend money on that thing. But
Yeah.
if you're taking a more holistic marketing approach to the consumer, uh, maybe SEO is not, you're not ready for that. Like maybe you need to spend some money in some other areas to kind of build up the pipeline and get you to the point where you have the money to spend on SEO for the length of time required to actually produce results for you. So What are your thoughts about how should a firm owner navigate the decision-making process of where their marketing budget should go based on, assuming a limited budget?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I definitely get that question quite a bit because we do have clients who they have a finite budget, might even be a very conservative budget, and they're trying to do everything, but their dollar gets spread thin relatively quickly. And so I will say my agency, we at this time, we don't do any paid advertising for our clients. We have partners that we've learned to trust over the years that we can make referrals to, or if a client has a PPC agency that they work with that they're trusted, then we'll definitely work with that PPC agency for whatever they might need to make sure that everything's working properly for them. I tend to believe that because SEO is a time intensive process, especially at the beginning, you won't see clear dividends for several months, that the earlier you get started with the proper activities of content and authority building, the faster you'll see that ROI develop. And so if you have a website that's marketable, making the assumption that the website is marketable and that you have good practice areas, you have good results page, you have a good bio, a clear call to action and value in the marketplace, I would say LSAs are probably a very good place to start to actively market, maybe even before you put some money into SEO. We do have clients come to us with both ends of the spectrum where they said, I burned a ton of cash in the past. I was spending $5,000-$10,000 a month on on PPC, and I just got really very few actionable leads. And I really want to focus my efforts on SEO. And so we'll proceed with that route. But I think for the law firm who's starting out, I think you need to focus some energy on the optimization of your website, the content of your website. But if you need leads now, I think LSA is a good solution for that.
Yeah, and LSAs is a new option in the arena, and a really good one for
Mhm.
many law firms, unless you're in a really highly competitive market or you simply don't have the Google presence, and even if you're making it available to pay for LSAs, they're just not delivering your listing, but you don't know until you try it. So it's
Right,
one of those things where like, okay, try it, but you don't actually need to hire a marketing agency to do that for you.
right.
You can
Yep,
you can get started on your own. You just get screened by Google and get that listing up there. Work on increasing your ratings and reviews because that's really what drives where you get placed there. And then see if your phone rings. See if you start getting charged for leads, and see if you start closing sales. But then once you've got that behind you, then you're like at this crossroads, right? SEO or PPC, or social media marketing or billboards, or like there's a lot of different places that once you're ready to commit significant dollars, like two, three, four, $5,000 a month to marketing,
hmm
um, there's a choice to be made about where's those dollars gonna be spent. So you're basically saying, look, SEO is a long game. It's not going to produce immediate results, but if you don't start it early, you're going to be playing catch up later. So you may as well invest in that right away
Yeah,
because it'll start to pay those dividends. Um, and I hear that approach. I think that it's a lot easier to make that decision with somebody who's getting good results from LSAs, for example. So they're not
sure.
worried about where's the next client coming from. I've got time to let it play out. Whereas if LSAs are not working for me, and I've exhausted my referral base, I've exhausted my friends and family, and I just, it's time for me to put on the big boy pants and go out and get cold leads that never heard of me before. At that point, SEO is gonna take time. And you say several months, and several is a very interesting choice of words. I like it, but at the same time, it can be very misleading. Like How
Sure.
many months are we talking about? It could be as
Yeah.
little as 3 or 4, but how long can it be before somebody actually sees results from SEO? It could be a lot longer than that, right?
Yeah, especially, more competitive practice areas and more competitive geographies drive that timeline out. And one thing you had mentioned, I kind of want to put a caveat on this. You'd said, do I invest that money in the SEO activities? And if you're doing that, it's very easy to hire someone who says that they do SEO, they're an SEO expert, and you ask them what law firms have you worked with, and they're like, well, we only work with one law firm, and we did this. And it's also easy for an SEO person to say all of these things that don't have an impact on your visibility. Well, we made sure to do a technical edit to this page, and we did this to that page, and we built you a profile on this directory. And if it doesn't come back to ROI, are they really doing the right things to push the ball forward? Because you can spin your wheels a lot in SEO doing the wrong things. Um, and I would say in terms of timeline, the less competitive the geography, the less competitive the practice area, the faster that you're going to find visibility success. We tend to give our clients the expectation, especially at the beginning of an engagement, give us 90 days to prove ourselves. Give us 90 days from SEO start date, and we'll be able to show you what progress we make in 90 days. And we don't tie our clients into a really long 1-year contract or something like that. So if at the end of 90 days you think that we haven't done a good job, or we haven't been able to prove ROI or show the progress that we've made, you can fire us, and you can take all of the work product that we created on your behalf with you, and we'll just part as former business partners. But clients in really competitive geographies, in personal injury, in family law, in criminal defense, they're going to need to expect that 6 to 12 months is a very legitimate timeline to see some decent strides being made in the progress.
Yeah. Excuse me. Um, all right. So we covered the writing piece, we covered the budgetary piece. What does it look like in evaluating that SEO provider? I mean, you just alluded to the fact that like not everybody is created equal, and one of the things you can do is ask them who they've worked with before. But are there other things that you can do to evaluate whether somebody really knows what they're doing? It's interesting because SEO is one of those abstract things where like people are just like, I'm paying the monthly fee and I'm getting an SEO service, but if I don't know the technology, if I don't understand what I'm looking for, the only thing I can do is do a Google search for some keywords that I might know we're targeting and see where I'm showing up. But other than that, I don't, I have no idea what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
Right. So some people are just taking my money and not doing anything. And other vendors are, I mean, literally having writers write articles and putting those articles up and, being really strategic with the placement of keywords and what the title of the article is and the meta tags and metadata of the article to have the right categories for Google to know that it's answering a question or it's talking about an event or whatever, that the technology is ever evolving and ever changing. And there's most firm owners are not going to know,
Yeah,
are they doing a good job or not, right? So
absolutely.
how do we evaluate before we establish the relationship on whether that's a good vendor? And how do we evaluate during the engagement? Like, how do we know if they're doing anything for us or not?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of questions there, and I think before you signed on the dotted line, one of the reasons why our agency does a month-to-month contract is because we're confident that once we get up and running with a client, we'll be able to show progress. And even in a short amount of time, say 90 days, we'll be able to show that there's some ROI there. Every client comes to us at a different position, but we have a track record and history to look back on with former clients and former law firms and current law firms that we could say, this process worked really well, and this is how we should start with this client at this point in time. And we should be able to display that to a client and say, your issue right now is exactly the same as this law firm that we started working with 2 years ago. And that's exactly where they're started at. And we can see where they're at now. I also think that there's a lot of value in testimonials. Lawyers don't like to say good things about marketers. That's what I found. And it's really hard to get a lawyer to say a good thing about an SEO firm. And when you have some endorsements from attorneys that you've worked with, not just for 6 months or a year, but 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and they can say, this company changed the way that we get leads from the internet, that's a huge endorsement. I think post engagement, the second half of your question, we obviously rely on traffic quite a bit. So we have to look and see, what traffic are you getting? And did we get you more traffic from an organic source? Are they traffic on the right pages? Are we getting traffic to your practice pages, which is more of a buying intent page? Are we getting traffic to your informational pages or your question answer pages like blogs? And is that actually resulting in people submitting a contact form, dialing the phone, and signing a retainer? I think that metric is important. The other thing is visibility. So when we start with a client, we start at a point where we say, this is how you appear for all of these search phrases, for all of the things that your practice should be found for. And we could go at any point in time and say, here's your rankings over this course of time for these search phrases, and you moved from page 7 to page 3, or whatever that might look like. And so we can continually validate our process and our impact on the site's visibility and on the client's bottom line.
So that basically post engagement, there are KPIs to look at. There,
Absolutely.
we can look at how you're ranking in search. We can look at what's happening within the website, like which pages are being hit. What are the actions that they're taking. But when it comes to the ranking, like I don't think anybody cares if you got them from page 7 to page 3.
Yeah,
Right?
no, they don't.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
until you get me to page 1, we didn't do anything. Right.
Right. Yeah. If you're not first, you're last, right? Yeah. And I acknowledge that, but we also have to acknowledge that Google isn't going to move you from 10th page to first page in 30 days for pretty much probably anything.
Right.
And there has to be a process where we prove to Google that you deserve to be on page 1. And that's in some cases, and in some search phrases and scenarios, that's going to be a shorter journey. Again, like you said, if it's a little bit more of an obscure phrase, if it's a smaller geography, say sub 50,000 population, and there's not many attorneys marketing into there, your journey to high visibility is going to be much faster than someone in Miami or Chicago or LA or San Francisco or New York City. It's just that way because you have to earn your spot by proving continuously to Google that you deserve placement and visibility.
Yeah, I love the way that you're articulating all of this. I'm trying to put myself in my listener's shoes, and as a business owner, it's such a challenging thing to invest in. I'm sure you get this a lot when you're in the sales conversation, because it's like, we don't know. I mean, it's going to be a long time until you get results. Long could be 3-4 months, could be a year and a half. And even then, we don't know what those results are going to be.
Well, if I may ask you, just to interject here, Moshe, given the option of buying a home or renting a home for 30 years, which would you choose?
I mean, there need to be other factors in that equation, but
I agree.
The knee-jerk reaction is own a home.
Why?
Because you believe that the asset you own will appreciate in value over time, and therefore you're not just paying rent to somebody, but you're investing in an asset that's going to go up in value.
I agree. I fully agree. And I think most lawyers and most professionals and most people just in general also believe that their home is going to go up in value, hopefully, and that they want to invest in in an appreciating asset. And SEO is much like that. When you invest in SEO, it's kind of like the amortization schedule of your house. You're really paying the interest on your loan front loaded, and you're paying the principal over time more and more as time goes on. And your benefit grows more and more as time goes on. And similarly with SEO, it's a little bit like an amortization calculator. Your investment gets more valuable over time. And the one thing that you should know is that if you're doing the process well and you've hired a good agency, and even if you don't see the return on investment today, at some point you're going to start to see more and more return on your investment because that benefit is compounding over time.
Yeah, I love that analogy and the way that you put it. It's a really good way to think about it, and it's a really good way for us to close out the show as we run out of time here. I really enjoyed the conversation. I think that my key takeaways from our discussion is SEO is worth investing in, and although it's not going to produce the leads tomorrow that you might need for day-to-day operations, the moment that you're able to invest some money into it, you should be doing that because it will take time, and you want to get that engine going as early as possible. At the same time, there's the payoff continues to increase over time. So you don't want to give up along the way. You want to continue to invest in it, but you also want to be selective with a vendor. So make sure that you're getting somebody who has multiple law firms they're working with. They have good reviews from those law firms, and they have clear KPIs that they're able to share with you, and you're checking in on those KPIs on a regular basis. Hopefully that kind of summarized it all
I think so.
in a few sentences. Doug, as we close the show out, number one, what is a parting piece of advice or wisdom that you want to share with our audience? Number two, how can somebody take the next step in getting to know more about you or exploring ways to work together, stuff like that?
Yeah, I would just say, having been in this industry for some time, be selective about who you outsource your website and SEO to. Be very particular. Make sure that they have the experience to get you found, that they understand your industry, and don't fall for buzzwords, don't fall for cheap marketing tactics. Pay the money to put a real professional in place to do the work for you if you're going to put a professional in place to do the work for you. If anybody needs to get in contact with me, it's very easy if you Google Everest Legal Marketing. I'm also pretty active on Twitter. So anybody who can find me on my website can follow me on Twitter as well.
Awesome. Folks, we're going to link all that up in the show notes to this episode. You can see that in the description of your podcast player as well as at profitwithlaw.com. We really appreciate you being here as a listener. If you're not subscribed to the show, you want to make sure to hit the subscribe button so you get notified when we release a new episode. Also, you may not know we have a YouTube channel where all of our episodes are posted, but there's also exclusive content specifically on YouTube that's not here on the podcast. And we take a lot of little snippets from many of these shows where we take like the meat of the conversation and turn it into a really short clip that gets posted over on YouTube as a YouTube short. My team has been building an entire library of those videos for you. We're well over a few hundred of those posted on our channel, and we just started the channel in March, so you can see how quickly this is developing for you as a great resource. We invite you to go check it out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel there. You can go to profitwithlaw.com/YouTube to find it very easily. And we appreciate you. Can't wait to be in your ears next week. We're here every single Thursday with another amazing guest interview. Doug, you've been incredible. Thank you so much for being here. Folks, take care. We'll catch you next week.
Thank you.